Final chapters. Runaway. I had made it as far as the 4-lane road outside our subdivision when Mom found me. She pulled up alongside me in the car and rolled down the window. "Amy Ann, come home," she said. "No," I said. "Where are you going to go?" "To Rebecca's house," I told her, even though I'd just thought of it and didn't know how to get there. All I really wanted to do was get as far away from my house as I could. A car honked at my mom for sitting in the right lane, and she drove ahead and pulled into the next driveway. She got out and was standing next to the car when I walked up. She and the car were blocking my way. "Your little sister is a mess," Mom said. "She thinks you're never coming back." "Good," I told her. "I'm not." "They didn't mean it, you know," Mom said. "They didn't know what they were doing, either of them. They didn't ruin your papers on purpose." "But they did. They ruin everything, and they never get in trouble for it, and it's not fair." I could feel myself starting to cry again, and I hiccuped a sob. Mom bent down. "Come here," she said. She pulled me into her arms, and I cried into her shoulder. "I wish you hadn't stomped and yelled. But you're right. You do make a lot of allowances for your sisters. Your dad and I really appreciate it, but sometimes we forget and we take it for granted. We're sorry, too." "I'm sorry I said I hate you," I told her. "I don't hate you." "I know, sweetheart, I know. Will you come home now?" I sobbed again. I didn't want to give up, but I didn't really know where I was going to go or how I was going to live without my family and my home. Running away was so easy for Claudia and Jamie in the mixed up files, but they were characters in a book, not real like me. I nodded into her shoulder. At home, Angelina and Alexis and the dogs practically knocked me down at the door. Angelina and Alexis threw their arms around me and hugged me tight. "I'm sorry I moved your box without asking," Alexis said. "I'm sorry I shredded your papers," Angelina said. It sounded like Dad had coached them on their apologies, but I still appreciated it. Dad hugged me too and told me he was glad I had decided not to run away after all. "Can we print new forms for you?" Dad asked. "Your mom can run you by her office tonight if it'll help. Were they something to do with the school board meeting tomorrow night?" "Yes," I said, still sniffling, "but it's too late." "We made new papers of you. We made new papers for you," Angelina said. She and Alexis handed me pieces of paper where they had drawn wobbly lines and filled them in with random words. Alexis's were full of ballet terms she had written out by herself. Angelina's were full of the names of My Little Pony characters Alexis had written in for her. I knew they were just trying to help, but it made me upset all over again. I was going to have to call Trey and tell him it was over. "If Mommy makes more, we can help you fill them out," Angelina said. "No, you don't understand," I said. There wasn't any way to explain to them that lists of ponies and ballet positions weren't going to help. They have to be filled out at school. And even if Mom was able to copy 1,000 of them, we would need every kid at Shelbourne Elementary to fill one out tomorrow by the end of the day. I suddenly got goosebumps again, but the good kind. The R.L. Stein goosebumps kind. That was it. That was the answer. "Could you?" I asked Mom. "Make lots of copies tonight? Make 1,000 copies?" "Well, yeah," Mom said. "We can go right now." Angelina and Alexis started jumping up and down, sensing my excitement, and the dogs yipped happily. Okay, let me print one up from online and we can go," I said. "No, wait. I need to make a phone call first." I ran to the kitchen and called Trey to tell him what happened. "She shredded every single one of them?" Trey said. He forgot he was supposed to be quiet so his mom didn't hear him. "She shredded every single one of them?" he whispered. "But we need those for tomorrow's school board meeting. The 4 of us can't fill all those out again in time, and by next month it'll be too late. There won't be any TV crews there next time. Nobody will care by then." "I know," I told him, "which is why we're going to get everybody in the school to fill them back out for us." "How?" Trey asked. "We could only fill those out when we were in the library. Even if we got library passes, we'd have to be in class the rest of the day." "Which is why we're going to run away from school," I said, butterflies flittering in my stomach like Claudia and Jamie in from the mixed up files. Play hooky from school? Trey asked in an excited whisper. And go where? I laughed. Where I always run away to, I told him. The bathroom. Malaria from watermelons. Trey and I explained everything to Danny and Rebecca on the bus, and we hid behind them as we came into school the next morning, making sure no teachers saw us before we slipped into the bathrooms. The girls' bathroom for me, the boys' bathroom for Trey. I scurried into the last stall, hung my backpack on the hook, and locked myself in. My day of playing hooky from school at school had begun. And from the mixed-up files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler, Claudia and Jamie leave their band instruments at home and pack all the clothes and money and toothbrushes and things they'll need when they run away in their empty instrument cases. I wasn't in the band, and neither was Trey, so we couldn't do the same thing. But we weren't staying overnight anyway. All I had packed in my backpack was the huge pile of requests for reconsideration forms my parents had printed off for me the night before, and enough snacks to make it through an entire day of school. The first bell rang, and I felt the first pangs of guilt for breaking the rules. When the second bell rang, the one that said I was now officially late to class, I actually shook, afraid that at any moment Detective Banana was going to come into the girls' bathroom with a sniffer dog and discover me. The door to the bathroom opened, and I lifted my legs up and held my breath. What if it was Principal Bananazeski coming to look for me? But wait, did that mean I should put my feet down just so I looked like a regular girl going to the bathroom? Maybe I should rattle the toilet paper or flush the toilet. No, then she'd expect me to come out of the stall. Amy Ann, are you in here? Somebody whispered. I recognized the voice right away. It was Jana Park, the girl who called me AA. Here, I whispered, opening the stall door and peeking outside. Jana had every one of the Little House on the Prairie books stacked up in her arms. Whoa, I said. You even checked out the doubles they had on the shelf. Rebecca said to, Jana told me. She said if we didn't, we might accidentally double up, and we didn't have time for that. Rebecca, so smart. Okay, I said, pulling one of the request for reconsideration forms from my backpack. Now I just need you to fill out a form for each book before you go back to class. Jana began to fill out the first form. But what do I say? There's nothing bad about Little House on the Prairie. She was right. But no, that was true about all the books. I had to think like Mrs. Spencer. Better, I had to think like Rebecca. They get malaria in that one, I said. That's scary, right? And the settlers think it's because they ate bad watermelon. But that's not how you get malaria. That's deliberately misleading. That could make a kid think you get malaria from watermelons. Jana giggled and wrote it in. This was the plan. We were going to do exactly what Mrs. Spencer had done when she wanted to ban books but didn't want to wait for the school board to say yes. We were going to check out as many books from the library as we could and then turn in requests for reconsideration forms for them all tonight at the school board meeting. Rebecca and Danny stayed on the outside, slipping notes into everybody's lockers that told them to check out books and bring them to me in the girls' bathroom and Trey in the boys' bathroom. That's where we were, playing hooky from school. So we could be here all day to help them fill out requests for reconsideration forms for all the books. If even half the kids at Shelbourne Elementary did it, we'd have hundreds of books banned by the end of the day. The door opened, and a third grader I didn't know came in with a stack of Banicula books. Is this where I go to ban books? She asked. Right this way, I told her. Let me get you a form. When you gotta go, you gotta go. Rebecca came to see me right before lunch, which was good because I needed help. The bathroom was full of girls from 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, all carrying stacks of books and filling out forms. They'd all gotten bathroom passes from their different home rooms and come to the bathroom at the same time. It's hysterical, Rebecca told me as she helped a 3rd grader fill out her form. Every time somebody comes back from the bathroom, somebody immediately raises their hand and asks if they can go. And you should see the library. Half the books are gone from the shelves. There's a line of kids checking out armfuls of books. The new lady, the not Mrs. Jones, she's about to have a heart attack. She hasn't had any time to read her celebrity magazines, but she can't get mad because checking out books is her job. A library without books in it. Just the thought of it gave me shivers. But that was exactly the point. We were going to show them that once you banned one book, you could ban them all, and there wouldn't be any books left to read. Check them out. Check them all out, I told Rebecca. Oh, and we need more copies of the request for reconsideration form. That meant we had already challenged almost 1,000 books. That was way more than Rebecca and Danny and Trey and I had been able to do by ourselves. I'll get Danny on it, she said. He checked in with Trey. He's over there banning as many books as you are. You know Jeffrey Gonzalez, Space Cadet Jeff? I helped him come up with reasons to ban each and every one of the Star Wars books. For what? Are you kidding? The Rebel Alliance are basically terrorists. They blow up the Death Star at the end of Star Wars. You know how many people must have been on that station? Thousands. That's mass murder. The bathroom door clunked open, and the voice I'd been dreading hearing all day boomed loud to be heard over the chatter. What's going on in here? Principal Bananazeski said. I squeaked and dragged Rebecca with me into the last stall in the end. We could hear the sounds of footsteps as half the girls in the bathroom hid in the stalls and the other half ran for the exit. Every teacher tells me there's a sudden run on the bathroom today, Principal Bananazeski said, walking up and down in front of the closed stall doors. She knocked on one of the other stall doors. What are you doing in there? Just going to the bathroom, Sophia Marin said from inside the stall. The principal's footsteps came closer to our stall. I pushed Rebecca down on the toilet seat and hopped in her lap in case Detective Bananazeski started looking under the stall doors. Rebecca winced. Principal Bananazeski knocked on the door of our stall, making us both jump. Who's in here? Rebecca and I looked at each other in horror. Finally, I nudged her. She had to be the one to talk. I was supposed to be home sick. Rebecca Zimmerman, she said. Rebecca, I think it's time you got back to class. Rebecca and I shared a panicked look. But I have a pass, Rebecca said. I think you've been gone from class long enough, Principal Bananazeski said. The lunch bell rang, making us jump again, and the hallway outside filled with the sounds of squeaking shoes, slamming lockers, and laughing students. Well, now that it's lunch period, I'm not technically missing class anymore, Rebecca said. She really was going to make a great lawyer one day. Principal Bananazeski sighed as more girls poured into the bathroom. Like Mirror Mrs. Jones in the library, she really couldn't get mad at students using the bathroom during lunch. That's when they were supposed to use the bathroom. From now on, please wait until lunchtime to use the bathroom if you can, Mrs. Zimmerman. Miss Zimmerman. Yes, ma'am, Rebecca said in her sweetest voice. We waited until Principal Bananazeski was gone, and Rebecca and I slumped back against the toilet in relief. Tell everybody to cool it with the bathroom requests, I told her, as she slipped out of the stall into the next book banner slipped inside. And don't forget to get me more forms. Good intentions. When Trey, Rebecca, and Danny and I met up after school, we had so many requests for reconsideration forms, we had to split them up between us to get them home. There must have been 5,000 banned books here. Easy, Trey said. Count them up tonight. I want to know, Rebecca said. Dude, the library looks like a tornado hit it, Danny said. There's hardly anything left in the fiction section. It was crazy. The four of us had only been able to fill out 500 forms in 4 days. In one day, with the help of all the other kids at school, we'd blown the roof off that number. We were going to be plunking down a 3-foot-tall stack of requests for reconsideration forms in front of the school board members. Mrs. Spencer wasn't going to know what hit her. So we're all going to be there tonight, right? I asked. We made sure everybody had a ride and said our goodbyes until tonight. Even though I was carrying 10 pounds of paper in my backpack, I felt like I was walking on air as I made my way down to the 2nd grade hall to meet up with Alexis. She usually took the first bus home while I took the late bus, but all that was over now that my parents had figured out I wasn't really staying behind to be part of an after-school club. I was going to have to start taking the early bus home with Alexis. But that was next week. This week, Mom and Dad were taking turns picking us up from school. Alexis was on a little kid's playground climbing around on the monkey bars. I hadn't been out here since I was little and everything felt different. All the old junky equipment had been replaced by new stuff. It was like a little playground city. New swings, 2 new slides, 1 double wide. A curlicue to climb up and a pole to slide down, monkey bars to swing across, and a little gazebo-like thing with a spinning tic-tac-toe game on it. There were even these little speaking tubes sticking up out of the ground. You could talk into one side and hear it across the playground. And covering the old hard dirt ground that used to turn to mud when it rained was a thick layer of chopped up rubber pieces. It squished when you walked on it. The new playground was pretty great. I wish we'd had it when I was in 2nd grade. I read the sign next to the entrance. Donated in memory of Mrs. Emily Briggs by Shelbourne Elementary PTA, Miss Sarah Spencer, President. Miss Sarah Spencer, Trey's mom. The book banner. She'd raised money for a new lower school playground as president of the Parent-Teacher Association. I stood and stared at the sign for a long time. How was the woman who banned books from the library the same person who bought the little kids a new playground? Dad pulled up and honked the horn. I waved to him and yelled, "Alexis, Dad's here." Alexis ran up, red-faced. "Cool playground," I said. "It's the best playground ever," she said. "Got your book bag?" I reminded her. She found it and we climbed into Dad's truck. I stared out the window at the shiny new playground equipment as we pulled away. Donated by the Shelbourne Elementary PTA, Mrs. Sarah Spencer, President. It had been so easy to think of Mrs. Spencer as a villain, but coming up with all those reasons to ban books had made me start to see things from her point of view. It didn't mean I thought she was right, but I was beginning to see how she must have had thought she was doing something good for us, even though she was wrong. In which I speak up. The room where the school board met was a very different place this time. All the seats on both sides of the aisles were filled, and a partition had to be taken down and new chairs brought in to fit everybody. Most of the kids from my class were there with at least one of their parents, and I saw kids from other classes and other grades too. 2 local camera crews were set up along the back wall, and they were already doing interviews with some of the kids who came. One of them recognized me when I came in with my family, but my dad put up a hand and said, "No comment." I did have a comment. Lots of comments, in fact, but I was saving them for the meeting. Mrs. Jones was there, wearing a big pink and white polka-dotted dress, and she broke away from an interview she was doing with a reporter to come over and swallow me in a giant hug. "Oh, Amy Ann, it's so good to see you," she said. I immediately started to tear up. "Mrs. Jones, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to get you fired." "It is not your fault at all," Mrs. Jones said. "I couldn't go on the way things were much longer anyhow. I knew it was coming. I'm very proud of what you did, and I don't want you to regret it one bit. But I got in trouble. I got a lot of people in trouble," I said. "Well-behaved women seldom make history," Mrs. Jones said with a smile. "Consider this your first taste of behaving badly in the name of what's right." She hugged me again. "Are you planning on talking tonight?" she asked me. "I'm already signed up," I told her. She nodded her approval and then excused herself to go back to her interview. On the far side of the room, I saw Mrs. Spencer take a seat. She was wearing another pretty skirt and jacket, light blue this time. And right beside her was Trey, wearing a tie. I couldn't believe it. He caught me looking at him and gave me a little thumbs up sign where his mom couldn't see it. Rebecca ran up to me while our parents said hello to each other. She dressed up too. She was wearing gray slacks and a gray jacket with a white button-down shirt underneath. "You have a suit?" I asked her. "Of course," Rebecca said. "Every lawyer needs a good suit." I was feeling distinctly underdressed. I was just wearing one of my sundresses with a ribbon tied around one of my braids. "You got yours?" Rebecca asked. I patted the backpack sitting in my chair. "Yep," I said. "You?" Rebecca hefted a big briefcase and smiled. The meeting was called to order, and Mom, Dad, Alexis, Angelina, and I found our seats. Mom and Dad had decided to bring all of us, and Alexis in particular wasn't happy about it. She was missing ballet practice to be here, and she plopped herself down in her seat with her arms crossed to show us how she felt. She was a grouch, but after my blow-up last night, she at least wasn't complaining about it out loud. The school board read out what had happened last time when I wasn't there. and talked about what they were going to talk about that night. Then it was time for public comment. I took a deep breath. My name was first on the list. I'd made sure of it. I stood, my legs shaking worse than when I'd been called to the principal's office that first time, and my mom squeezed my hand in support. I hadn't been able to do this the first time I'd been to a school board meeting, but I was going to do it now. I nodded to Rebecca and Danny, and they stood to join me at the podium. Mrs. Spencer was shocked when Trey stood up and joined us too. "Only one speaker at a time, please," one of the school board members said. "I'll do the talking then," I told them. My heart felt like it was in my throat, and it was hard to squeeze the words out past it. But it got easier the more I did it. "I'm Amy Ann Olinger, President and Chief Librarian of the BBLL. "The BBLL?" a school board member asked. "The Banned Books Locker Library." That caused a ripple of comment throughout the audience, and I could feel the bright lights of the television cameras on me. It was almost too much. I wanted to duck down underneath the podium and never come out again, but I clung to the sides of it instead, using it to hold me up. The chairman of the school board banged his gavel for quiet. "We're not going to hear any more arguments for keeping removed books on the shelf," he told us. "We've already had that discussion." "No," I said. "We're not here to try to get those books back," I said. "We're here with more challenges." That was the cue. Danny, Trey, and I opened our backpacks, and Rebecca opened her briefcase. Each of us pulled out a huge pile of papers and carried them up to the round table at the front, stacking them on top of each other so they would look really impressive. Behind us, I could hear cameras snapping and more whispers and questions. "What is this?" the chairman asked. I went back to the microphone. "Request for reconsideration forms," I told him. "We think there are more books we shouldn't be able to read." The school board members started taking sheets from the big stack. Each one was for a different book. I'd made sure. "But there must be thousands of books here," one of them said. 7,541, I said. It wasn't every book in the library, not even half, but it had put a serious dent in the shelves. The number got a big response from the audience, and the chairman had to gavel them to be quiet again. "These are a joke," one of the school board members said. "You want to ban a math textbook?" "It has imaginary numbers in it," I said. "We're afraid that will encourage kids to have imaginary friends." The audience laughed, and I felt better about talking. My hands relaxed on the podium. "Here's one challenging the dictionary," said another board member. Danny leaned into the microphone. "Oh, that book is full of dirty words. I looked all of them up." He turned to the cameras behind him, ran his fingers through his hair, and smiled a $1,000,000 smile. "Danny Purcell," he said. 2 N's, 2 L's. "Magic Treehouse," said another board member. "Challenged for building code violations?" Mrs. Spencer stood in a huff. "Your Honors, this is clearly a joke. Can we move on?" My dad stood up. "Oh no," he said. "I work in construction and I've seen those books. That treehouse doesn't have any handrails, and you can see from the pictures those floor joists aren't anywhere near 12 inches apart." That got another laugh and stirred everybody up again. "Mr. Chairman," Mrs. Spencer called over the ruckus. "Mr. Chairman, I move that these new challenges be ignored so we can get on to real business." "You can't make a motion during public comment," Rebecca said into the microphone. "Besides, she's not even supposed to be talking. You said only one speaker at a time." "And who are you?" the chairman asked. "Rebecca Zimmerman, legal counsel for the BBLL," Rebecca said very importantly. "Then surely her time is up," Mrs. Spencer said. The chairman looked relieved. "It is up. I'm afraid you're going to have to take a seat, Mrs. Olinger. He consulted his list and his voice turned weary. "It's Rebecca Zimmerman's turn to speak." Rebecca leaned into the microphone. "I respectfully cede my remaining time to Amy Ann Olinger." The chairman of the school board covered his mic, but everybody in the room could hear him ask the other members, "Can she do that? Is that allowed?" "It is in Robert's Rules of Order," Rebecca told him, "and the next 12 names are all Shelbourne Elementary students who are going to cede their time to Amy Ann, so you're going to have to listen to what she has to say." The kids who signed up to speak stood up, scattered in different rows around the room. Rebecca's mom and dad, both wearing suits, gave her big smiles and double thumbs up. Your Honor, I said, charging ahead before they could tell me to sit down, you have to ban these books. We have to do no such thing, the chairman said. Most of these challenges are for silly reasons. Silly to you, maybe, but all the reasons are silly to someone else. And we think the challenges to the books already removed are silly. What makes one person's reason any sillier than another person's reason? That got them quiet. And the quiet made me nervous again. I desperately wanted to suck on my braids, but I knew I couldn't, not here. So I gripped the podium harder. You took the Egypt game off the library shelves because one person didn't like the kids pretending to worship an Egyptian god. You took the Junie B. Jones books off the shelf because one person didn't like the way she talks. You took my favorite book in the whole wide world from the mixed up files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler off the shelves because one person said it taught kids how to lie and cheat and run away from home, even though I never cheated on anything. I hoped they wouldn't notice that I'd left out lie and run away from home and pushed on. You can't have it both ways. If you banned those books just because one person had a problem with them, you have to ban all these books too because we found one person who had a problem with each of them. And when you're done, there isn't going to be a single book left on the Shelbourne Elementary shelves. But I guess that's okay with you. The Wake County School Board doesn't want its students to read any books that scare them or teach them or entertain them or show them new things or make them sad or happy or shock them or open their minds, which is all of them. The room was dead quiet now, except for the hum of the TV cameras. The school board members looked pale under the fluorescent lights in the ceiling, or maybe that was because of the TV cameras too. Mrs. Spencer spoke up. She never even sat down. This is silly, she said. Those books were removed from the Shelbourne Elementary Library for good reason, because they're harmful. Each and every one of them encourage bad behavior of one kind or another, and I think we can all agree that none of us want an entire generation of Shelbourne Elementary students growing up to be menaces to society just because some book they read in 4th grade showed them how. Rebecca was about to say something, probably to remind the school board that there was only supposed to be one speaker at a time, but I put a hand on her arm to stop her. So all those books you challenged, I said to Mrs. Spencer, if I read one of those, I would grow up to be a bad person? I'd say the chances are good, yes. I was ready for this. I could feel everyone in the room watching me, waiting to hear what I would say, waiting for me, Amy Ann Olinger, to speak up. Mrs. Spencer, one of the first books you banned was Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Have you ever read it? One or two people in the room coughed. They knew the book talked about embarrassing stuff you didn't talk about in a big room full of people, stuff like things that happen to a girl's body when she becomes a teenager. Mrs. Spencer blushed. No, of course not. I looked right at her. Are you sure? Mrs. Spencer raised herself up. I'm sure I didn't. That's funny because I've got this old date due card from the Shelbourne Elementary copy, and it's got your signature on here from 1982. The audience gasped and giggled as I held up the card I'd found in the back of the book's library's old copy of Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. The color drained from Mrs. Spencer's face. Well, I might have checked it out once, but when I saw what it was, I didn't read it, Mrs. Spencer said. 5 times? I asked. That got a big laugh from the audience. The TV reporters were loving it. Mrs. Spencer looked sick and she started to sit down. I didn't like what she'd done and I wanted to fix it, but I didn't want to punish her. Mrs. Spencer, wait, I said. Mrs. Spencer, is it true that you're on the North Carolina Art Museum board? Mrs. Spencer looked confused. Yes, I am. And the Raleigh Race for the Cure Foundation board? Yes. And the North Carolina State Opera Society board? Yes, she said, and my dad whistled a little cheer. And you were the one who raised money for the new lower school playground at Shelbourne Elementary, I said. Well, yes, there were a lot of people involved with that, but I oversaw it. Mrs. Spencer, would you say you're a good person? I asked. Mrs. Spencer swallowed like she was trying not to cry. Yes, she said, I like to think so. I think so too, I told her. I think you grew up to be a very nice person and a good mom and a very good citizen, even though you read this book you said was so bad 5 times when you were in 5th grade. Probably because for all the amazing things books can do, they can't make you into a bad person. Mrs. Spencer sat down to wipe her eyes with a tissue. The room was quiet again, and everyone was still watching me. The chairman of the school board finally cleared his throat and spoke. Miss Olinger, do you have anything else? Well, we do have a presentation about the First Amendment drawn by our challenge response coordinator, Trey McBride, I said. The chairman held up a hand. I don't think we need that. One of the other school board members leaned toward her mic. I think perhaps we do, Stan. She motioned for Trey to bring them the pictures, and he handed out the presentation he and I had created for Mr. Vaughn's class. The school board passed them around respectfully. What's this one with the Pope lifting weights? One of them asked. The free exercise of religion, Trey told them. I gave him an exasperated look. What? He said, it still works. They can do whatever they want in church, even if it's jerks and squats. Thank you, Mr. McBride, the lady who'd asked for the pictures. He collected them all and came back to the podium and we waited. The school board members knew they were in trouble. They either had to ban all the books that were challenged or they had to ban none of them. Either way, they were going to look like idiots in front of the TV cameras. Mrs. Jones came to their rescue. She got up and joined us at the podium. I think I have a solution, she said. If Miss Olinger will cede some of her time to me, I nodded. Ladies and gentlemen of the school board, not so long ago when I was the librarian at Shelbourne Elementary, we had an official policy for book challenges. When a book was challenged, it went to a faculty committee for review, and then to me, your hired representative, for a final decision. It was a fair and balanced system you yourselves designed and approved, and it was a system that protected everyone in the process. But none of the books that have been removed from the Shelbourne Elementary Library ever went through that process, not one. One or two of the school board members started to understand where she was going, even if I didn't. All the trouble began when the official request for reconsideration policy was abandoned, and this board began arbitrarily removing books from the shelves. I humbly submit that we go back to the policy as set down in the original school board's bylaws. In doing so, the books originally removed from the Shelbourne Elementary shelves will be returned, pending a full review by the faculty committee and a final decision by the school librarian. Then, if it's determined that the books are inappropriate for students of that age, they can be removed. And if not, Mrs. Jones trailed off, but we all knew what was going to happen. The books would stay on the Shelbourne Elementary shelves, and everyone who had banned them to begin with would get a great big do-over. This time, they wouldn't make the same mistake twice. Move to submit all challenged books through the reconsideration policy as set forth in the school board bylaws, one of the board members said. Second, 3 more of them said quickly. All those in favor? Asked the chairman. Aye, they all said quickly. He didn't even ask if there were any opposed. He banged his gavel, and the room erupted in cheers. I grabbed up Danny and Trey and Rebecca in one big hug. I don't understand, Danny said. What does it mean? It means they made a motion during public comment time, which legally you're not supposed to do, Rebecca said. Oh, hush, I told her. I hopped up and down. It means we won. Agent Double A. The day after the school board meeting, every local news station and newspaper wanted an interview with me. We even got a call from a national cable news channel. Mom and Dad finally gave in and let me do interviews, but I said the same thing in all of them. It was something that Mrs. Jones had said the first day Mrs. Spencer came to challenge Captain Underpants, and I practiced it over and over until I got it right every time. Nobody has the right to tell you what books you can and can't read except your parents. Mrs. Jones got her job back, and all the books that had been banned from the Shelbourne Elementary Library were returned to the shelves for good. Somebody from the local newspaper came out to take pictures of me, Rebecca, Danny, and Trey, helping Mrs. Jones put them back. Before we got started, Mrs. Jones pinned a plastic badge to my shirt. I flipped it up to look at it. It was one of the badges the teachers wore. It had my picture on it, and beside that it said, Amy Ann Olinger, Assistant Librarian. There you go, Mrs. Jones said. Now it's official. Although, if you're going to be a real librarian, we're going to have to talk about library patron privacy. But that's a discussion for another time. Congratulations, Amy Ann, and thank you. Mrs. Jones swallowed me in a big polka-dotted hug, and Rebecca, Danny, and Trey clapped like I'd won some big award. Mrs. Jones wheeled out the cart of banned books, and we started putting them back where they belonged, while reporters took pictures. When we got to the end, there were a bunch of stapled books with construction paper covers that I had never seen before. The title on the first one was Agent Double A versus the Book-Eating Bovine. There was a picture on the cover of a spy girl with a mask over her eyes fighting a ninja cow with a book in its mouth. In the top corner it said, First Amendment Comics. Those are some new acquisitions I was hoping you could help me shelve, Mrs. Jones said. They go in the graphic novels section under M for McBride. Danny flicked his hair out of his eyes so he could see. Trey drew this? He said. Sweet! Agent Double A, huh? Rebecca said. She looks a lot like you, Amy Ann. Trey blushed. I just got inspired. I grinned. I liked it, especially because I wasn't a mouse anymore. I was a kick-butt secret agent. I'm not sure what your mom is going to like being drawn. I'm not sure your mom's going to like being drawn as a cow, though, I said. Trey's eyes went wide. Oh yeah, let's not tell her. The end. I admired my new librarian badge as I sat on the first bus home that afternoon with my sister Alexis. The bus let us off at the bottom of our street, and Alexis pirouetted for home. I stood and stared again at my yellow house. I still liked the idea of running away from the mixed-up file style, but only for the adventure. I wasn't so reluctant to go home anymore. My house was still chaos central, no doubt about that. It was me who was different. I wasn't going to take things lying down anymore. If something bothered me, I was going to say something about it. Come on, Amy Ann, Alexis called, and I hurried to catch up. Flotsam and Jetsam greeted us at the door, jumping all over us and almost knocking me down. They scrambled away just as quickly, chasing Angelina as she galloped by into the living room. No one was in the kitchen, but I could hear Dad singing his favorite opera song somewhere down the hall. Amy Ann, are you and Alexis home? My mom called. That surprised me. My mom wasn't usually home this early. Yeah, I called back. Come and help us, Mom said. We're in the guest bedroom. Great. If they were in the guest bedroom, that probably meant they were cleaning it for somebody to stay in and they wanted my help. Sure enough, when I got there, I found Dad pulling boxes out of the closet and Mom taking stuff off of her desk. Why don't Angelina and Alexis have to help? I wanted to ask, so I did. Because this isn't going to be their bedroom, Mom said. It's going to be yours. I was stunned. My bedroom? As in all mine and nobody else's? Dad lifted a dumbbell. Your mom and I realized we had a workout room nobody ever worked out in. And a home office I never do office work in, Mom said. And if your grandmother and grandfather come and visit, we'll put them in our room and we'll sleep on the pull-out couch in the living room. It's high time you and Alexis had your own rooms. And maybe now you won't feel like you have to stay late in the library after school just to avoid coming home. Dad said. I blushed. I'm sorry, I told them again. Mom hugged me. It's all right, sweetheart. It's not a big house, I know. And it can feel overwhelming sometimes. A lot of times, I thought. And I said so. Mom laughed. A lot of times. But now you'll have your very own fortress of solitude. Here, I've already cleared off a bookcase for you. You can use one shelf for the books you own and another for the books you check out from the library. I ran to get my stack of books from my room, my old room, and put them on the shelf one by one. I was going to have to start alphabetizing them by author, maybe even separate them out by subject. But for now, I just stuffed them on the bookshelf. My very own bookshelf. I filled the shelf beneath the books I owned with the 6 books I brought home from the library that day. You checked all these out today? Dad asked. He picked up the Hunger Games and flipped through it. Whoa, he said. This seems pretty violent. He closed it and read the back cover. It says the main character is 16. It was in the Shelbourne Elementary Library, I told him. Yes, but Shelbourne Elementary goes up to 6th grade, he said. I think maybe I don't want you reading this one just yet. I gawked at my dad. You're banning that book? But we just got the school board to stop banning books. No, Dad said. You got the school board to stop banning everybody from reading books. As I seem to recall, we're still your parents and can tell you what you can and can't do. But Rebecca's parents let her read it, I said. Rebecca's parents can let her do whatever they want, Dad said. How did that cute little girl on TV put it, hun? He asked my mom. Nobody has the right to tell you what books you can and can't read except your parents, Mom said, quoting what I had said on TV right back to me. There wasn't much I could say to that. I was the one who said it. And I had to admit, this was exactly what I fought for. Dad kissed me on the top of my head and put the Hunger Games on top of the bookshelf. Just wait a couple years, he said. You'll like it better then anyway. I nodded. I wasn't happy about it, but I respected their decision. Every now and then you had to break the rules to do the right thing, but a lot of times following the rules was the right thing. That made me think of something, and I smiled. Mrs. Spencer had banned my favorite book because she thought it would encourage kids to lie, steal, and be disrespectful to adults, and I had done all those things. But it wasn't any book that made me do all that. It was banning a book that made me lie, steal, and be disrespectful to adults. I thought that was pretty funny and thought about saying so to my parents. So I did. Yay! I hope you enjoyed it. I love you.